The Way Home Looks Now. From the author of The Great Wall of Lucy Wu. Chapter 1. I am only gone long enough to get the eggs. Ba had asked me to stop by the Minute Mart after school, but I had forgotten and come straight home, only to have to leave again. I ride my bike, but with the eggs I have to ride fast, slow enough that the eggs won't break, but fast enough that I won't get in trouble. When I turn the corner to our street, I see my sister, Elaine, sitting on the steps. She had been inside when I left, but now she is outside, holding her binoculars. What are you doing, Lainey? Looking for birds? Lainey usually looks for birds in the morning, but really, for her, any time is a good time. I move past her to open the door. The knob turns slightly but then stops hard. We're locked out? I ask, trying to make it sound like it's not a big deal. Elaine draws a quick, sharp breath of air. I came outside to get my binoculars. I knocked but... She stops. Do you think you locked the door on your way out? Or did the door lock behind after you left? I say the words a little more harshly than I mean to. I don't know. Now, for the first time, Elaine looks frightened. I knocked and rang the doorbell, but I guess she didn't hear me. I pound on the door, hard enough that I can feel it all the way down to my bones. I press the doorbell, too. Mom. Mom. I try all the variations, barking her name, dragging out the middle like a foghorn, stand ing away from the door and throwing my head back like a dog. Nothing. Silence. It's probably okay, I tell myself. Elaine probably just locked the door without meaning to. Mom's probably okay. She has to be okay. But then another voice edges in. Shouldn't she have noticed that Elaine isn't in the house? I turn the doorknob a little harder, just to check, but... stays put. Why don't you wait here for Ba, I say. I make voice light. I'm going to try the back door. Can I? No, it's easier if you stay here, I lie. I walk slowly. To the corner of the house until Elaine can't see me. And then I start running. My legs feel heavy and dull. I can't go fast enough. The ground is wet and thick from the last of the snow. The back of the house might as well be a mile away, though I finally get there. The kitchen door is also locked. We almost never open it in the wintertime, but there's a window, and that's all I need. If I stand in the right place, I can see through the kitchen doorway into the living room. My heart hammers against my chest, threatening to split me in two. I don't know what I thought I was going to see, but she's there. She's still there. Mom. She's sitting on the couch, watching TV, the way she has for the last 6 months. From where I'm standing, it looks like the TV is of newspaper making her curl and fade away, like a scrap in the sun. I look down at the ground and then look back up, double-checking. She is still there, inhaling, exhaling, blinking. She didn't lock us out on purpose. Elaine must have accidentally hit the lock button, and then Mom didn't hear her knocking. I see the front door open, and Ba walks in, followed by Elaine. Elaine squeezes around him and heads for the living room. Ba takes off his coat and carefully places it on a hanger. Then he takes off his shoes, one by one, untying the laces and putting the shoes side by side on a rug by the door. He is so slow, so careful in the way he moves. He wasn't worried about the door being locked. I imagine him pulling up in the driveway, saying hello to Elaine and then unlocking the front door. He probably doesn't even notice I am gone. Ba disappears briefly as he walks down the hallway, behind the wall, and then he reappears at the living room doorway. He sticks his head in for just a moment and then heads upstairs. Like nothing is wrong. Like there is nothing even close to being wrong. Through the window, it feels like I'm watching my own TV show, except the sound is off. Just like with real TV, I can't tell the characters what to do. If I could write my own TV show, Ba would hurry inside. He would know that something is wrong when Elaine is locked out. And he wouldn't act like mom watching TV all day is normal. I wonder how it is that he can see so little when I see so much. Peter, come here, Ba calls when I come inside. I put the eggs in the refrigerator and go upstairs to where Ba is sitting on the edge of his bed. I'm barely in the door when he looks at me and frowns. You're tracking in mud. I look down, and sure enough, there is a trail of muddy footprints behind me. I reach down and pull off my shoes, one by one. In the process, I get some of the mud on my shirt. Ba closes his eyes and shakes his head. I got a call from Miss Gunderson before I left work today, he says. You know. He is a pharmacist at Merkmer's Drug. Do what Miss Gunderson said to me? Here's what my father can see: reports from teachers, bad grades, unfinished homework. I am sure the old bat has lots to say about me, not that I'm going to offer any guesses. Ba continues, Miss Gunderson told me that you do not write your name on your paper. Not a single assignment. And you are the only one in her English class who fails to write down his name. Miss Gunderson seems to take my existence in her class as a personal insult. Maybe she thought she was getting a different kind of student, the kind I was last year. I wasn't the smartest, but I did okay. A pleasure to have in class. That kid is gone, though. If I'm the only one, then she should know that the paper with no name is mine, I point out. Ba ignores my comment. Your teacher explained to me that her rules are there to ensure an orderly classroom. And one of those rules is that you must write your name on all your papers to receive full credit. Ba pauses a moment to consider the full extent of my misdeed. Is this some form of rebellion? What? No. It is just like Ba to think my forgetfulness is actually a criminal act. Ba picks up the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and shows it to me, snapping the paper so it crackles. Are you sure? Because look at this. These high school students had a sit-in in the cafeteria. 800 of them. It's that bad influence from the colleges. My father's disdain for the Vietnam War protesters is well known in our family. Tell me the truth, demands Ba. That is his other big bugaboo, being honest. I'm not staging a protest, I tell him. But it's too late. Ba starts his rant. You have one job, and that is to focus on school. Do your best. These students here, he thwacks the newspaper with his hand dash, they are protesting the vending machines. When I was a student in China, I would never have dreamed of doing such a thing. We stood up when the teacher entered the room. The teacher commanded the highest authority. What I want to say is, but back then, there wasn't a war in Vietnam or women fighting for equal rights. You didn't worry about getting bused to a different school because everyone in China looks the same. My father didn't even have a TV, I'm not sure they were even invented back then. It's not the same. When my father is satisfied that a rebellion is not imminent, he has another question. Are you writing about the baseball players again? I shake my head. Last year, I wrote about baseball for every assignment I could. I wrote a haiku about laying down a bunt. My essay on a famous landmark was on Forbes Field. After managing to work in a reference to the Pirates in all my spelling word sentences, my teacher called and said that maybe I should take a break from writing about baseball for a while. But I haven't written about baseball in a long time. You would think that my father, man of science and great believer in cleanliness and order, would love baseball. Out of all the sports, it is the most precise, the most mathematically pleasing. There are 9 positions, 9 innings, 3 strikes at bat, and 3 outs for each team. Baseball is so exact that it is the only sport I know of that officially assigns errors to players when they screw up. Maybe after this latest run-in with Miss Gunderson, Ba would like to assign an error to me. Ba is convinced that if I just work harder, if I just stop making mistakes, I will be a great student, but the truth is, even if we get past the no name on paper and unfinished homework, it's still not going to happen. But my father has enough troubles as it is without me bursting his bubble. I just hope by the time he figures things out, the disappointment won't be too hard. Maybe by then, Mom will feel better. On the way to dinner, I duck into the living room to check on Mom. It's dark, but it's always some kind of dark, even as the days are slowly getting longer. The only real light is from the flicker of the television. Hi, Mom. I don't really need to have the light on to see her. She's in the same position as when I looked through the back door. She is sitting on the far side of the couch, next to the telephone table. She has one arm across her stomach and one arm folded up so that her hand is against her cheek. I want to sit next to her, just for a moment, and pretend we live in the before. Back then, Mom might watch TV for a few minutes before cooking dinner or while she was waiting for the timer to go off for a pie in the oven. She would put her arm around me and ask about my day. I'll tell you that I've thought about all the times I said my day was not bad, without really appreciating how good it was to have a not bad kind of day. But instead I sit near her at the end of the couch, not next to her, because we live in the after. In the after, Ba is making scrambled eggs in the kitchen. In the after, Ba yells at me if he thinks I'm bothering Mom, and I'll take anything I can from her, even a quiet moment. Ba appears in the doorway. Leave your mother alone, Peter. She is tired. Will you come eat with us tonight? I ask her. A commercial comes on, temporarily illuminating Mom's face. She closes her eyes and shakes her head. I'm not hungry. I'm disappointed, but not surprised. Come, Peter, says Ba, more urgently this time. I slide out of the living room, past Ba, into the harsh light of the kitchen. Elaine is already waiting at the table, tapping her fork against her plate. Cut it out, I tell her. Elaine scowls at me, and then taps on her plate a few more times just to make a point. She stops when Ba walks back into the kitchen, though. It's not a big table, but there is a lot of space for just the three of us. Sometimes Elaine or I have to get up and walk around the table to get the bottle of soy sauce that's been left too close to the far end or the milk jug that's just out of reach. It would be easier to stretch across the table, but Ba won't allow it. It's not proper. When Ba has to work on Saturdays, and Elaine and I eat lunch alone, we stretch across the table until our stomachs are in the middle and our legs are hanging off the ends. We feel like we're getting away with something, even though we're the only ones there. Ba brings the frying pan over to the table and begins serving eggs. They tumble out of the pan, dry and rubbery. Ba adds 2 buttered triangles of toast to each plate. That's dinner. There was a tiny sliver of time when the ladies in the neighborhood brought us dinners. They brought over kind of casserole. Tuna noodle. Chicken a king. Shepherd's pie. I think they chose those dishes because they're soft and warm, and that's what you need when you're sad. How are you doing? They would ask, usually holding a casserole dish with 2 oven mitts. Their voices would be extra soft and clear. They would lean forward slightly and look down the hall. How is your mother? Are you being a good boy for her? She can't come out right now, I would repeat the words Ba had told me to say. Thank you for asking about her. I remember liking the dinners, the fact of them foil-wrapped gifts. It made me feel secure to know they were there. But Ba hated them. He couldn't bring himself to refuse, to say no. That would be too rude. But I could tell from the way he accepted the pans that he hated them, and not just because he likes Chinese food better than American. No matter how good the food smelled, he would never say anything but thank you. He would say the words like he was trying not to let his lips touch his teeth. The fact that those with their casseroles meant that they ladies showed up knew about us, these people who didn't really know us except for the fact that we lived on the same street. We were exposed. Eventually, the casserole stopped coming. That was an unspoken signal that we were supposed to go on with our lives and act like everyone else. I bet that made Ba feel better. I still miss them. Chapter 2. In the before, he was a god hurling lightning bolts across the universe. He was my brother, throwing pitches in the backyard. Watch me again, said Nelson. He kicked his leg high and reared back, and then fired another one. The ball skipped off the edge of my glove, crashing into the hydrangeas. The leaves shook, and the last of the dried petals fell like snow. There was no real snow. Instead, it was that point in August when it seemed like we would always be hot and sweaty. It would never be fall, we would never have Christmas. It was only 10 in the morning, and sweat was already running into my eyes, making them sting. We were waiting to climb into our station wagon to go to the Little League World Series in Williamsport. Taiwan was in the final, playing a U.S. team from Gary, Indiana. Every Chinese family we knew was going, and in Taiwan, where it was already nighttime, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins were napping so that they could get up later, in the middle of the night, and listen to the game on the radio. This is a chance for the world to remember Taiwan again, Ba had said at breakfast. This was a bitter point for him. My father's family had fled the communist takeover of China when he was a boy. They joined other Chinese who set up the Kuomintang government in Taiwan. To him, the real China was Taiwan. But the world seemed to be paying more attention to China, the big one. Ba said there was even talk of removing Taiwan from the United Nations in favor of China. I was not quite sure what that meant, but it didn't sound good. In any case, I could tell this was a big deal because my father was willing to drive for 3 hours to watch a baseball game. Ba usually drove that far for a family event or for something he thought was educational, but baseball had never fit that category before. Maybe he thought this game would be instructive or informative or one of those other good-for-you words. But for me and Nelson, with or without the politics, it was exciting because it was baseball. And while we were waiting to leave, Nelson suddenly got it into his head that I needed to know how to throw a palm ball. If Nelson said I needed to know something, I believed him. Nelson taught me everything I knew about baseball. Nelson was the one who taught me how to read from the sports page and took me to the batting cage. When I was 5, I would tell anyone who would listen that the first commissioner of baseball was the oddly named Kennesaw Mountain Landis. But the most important thing Nelson taught me was that the Pittsburgh Pirates were the best team in the world. Even though I was just a baby when Bill Mazeroski hit his walk-off home run to win the 60 series in the 9th inning of the 7th game, I always felt like I had been there because Nelson saw it. He told me about it, over and over, like a fairy tale. Make a split between your ring and middle fingers, said Nelson. Hold it deep in your hand. Everything came easily to him, sports, grades, even girls. He was the Lauda, the oldest, the most important. The firstborn son. He never played on the high school team, though, which everyone said was a shame. Ba said school came first. Nelson walked to the other end of the yard, squatted down, and held up his glove. Don't overthink it. Just throw it. I gripped the ball the way Nelson showed me, and wound up. Even though I understood, in theory, how it all worked, in some ways it seemed more like magic than science that you could change the spin and direction of this little ball just by changing the grip, the way the air traveled over the seams. Not a bad first try, Peter, said Nelson. He tossed the ball back to me. Try again. I wound up, and then stopped. The Pirates have a game today, I said to Nelson. I wasn't telling him because he didn't know. Of course he knew. I was really trying to say something else. Nelson shook his head. Can't put the nut on too soon. It won't work if you start too soon. This was our ritual, our magic, putting a peanut, exactly one peanut still in its shell, on the radio, for the Pirates. I don't even remember why, exactly, a peanut ended up on the radio, but I do know it happened for the first time during Doc Ellis's no-hitter, and we'd done it ever since. It didn't always work, but we'd reached the point that not putting a peanut on the radio seemed downright dangerous. As Nelson said, we had to show that we believed. I was in the middle of another wind-up when I heard the squeak of the back door opening. Peter, have you packed your homework? And, Nelson, you should help your mother get ready. I hung my head. I was the only kid I knew who had to do homework over the summer. 3 pages in a workbook, Monday through Friday. Lainey had homework, too, but hers was so easy it didn't really count. This was all Ba's idea. Nelson tried to help me out. Hey, Ba, why don't you give Peter a break today? Today is kinda special. There are silences from people who just have nothing to say, and silences from people who say everything by ignoring you. My father had perfected the latter. I'll get it, I said, a little too loud. It's no big deal. My father and Nelson had been fighting all summer over every topic they could think of. That morning, they had fought over Nelson's hair, which Ba said was too long, and which I thought made him look kind of like Bruce Lee, the kung fu movie star. Nelson probably couldn't wait to go back to college. Most of the fights were Ba's fault. Our appearance, our grades, our behavior, no matter how good, were never good enough. Lainey caught some slack, because she was the youngest and a girl, but that just meant Ba had more energy for me and Nelson. When I came back outside, Mom and Nelson were loading our orange cooler into the back of the station wagon. I could hear the glass soda bottles clinking inside. What did you pack? I asked. Mom ticked the items on her fingers. Fried chicken, potato salad, strawberries, and a cake. And then, knowing what my next question would be, she added, lemon chiffon cake. I should have known she had made a cake because the mixer kept messing up the TV reception last night. Mom always knew the right thing to cook. Lemon cake tartness would cut right through a hot summer day. Hey, Peter, said Mom. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a peanut. She blew on it and rubbed it between her hands. Don't forget this before we leave. She tossed it to me. Mom loved the Pirates as much as we did, and had burned more than one shirt getting caught up in listening to a game on the radio while she ironed. Her favorite player was Roberto Clemente. Mom liked to say he was a great player and a true gentleman. We need to get going, said Ba, locking the front door. We need to make sure we are there before the game starts. He turned the knob, testing it. Wait, I said. I need to go back inside. Ba sighed. I already told you to use the bathroom. It will take just a second, I pleaded. I tucked the peanut inside my fist. Ba didn't know about the peanut, and more to the point, he wouldn't care. Ba looked at Mom, and Mom smiled and made a motion with her head. Come on. Let him in. Ba turned the key and opened the door a crack. I dashed in before he could change his mind. When I came back out, Mom and Ba got into the front seat. Then Nelson climbed in the row behind them. I bowed low and pointed to the car. After you, Lady Elaine, I said, all gentlemanlike. Elaine crossed her arms. Oh no. I'm not falling for that. You just want me to sit in the middle. I am distressed, I said, putting my hands over my heart. Dismayed by your very accusation. Elaine was, however, also correct. I hated sitting in the middle of the station wagon. You didn't get a window, and there was a hump on the floor in front of the middle seat that was too narrow to put both feet on top and too wide to comfortably put one foot on each side. Children. Ba folded his arms. Elaine and I stared at each other, neither one of us willing to budge. With come on, Peter. Sit next to me. I'll help you your homework, said Nelson. I got in first, and then Elaine, who smiled like a priss. I waited as long as I could, telling Ba that doing homework on the side streets made me carsick. He didn't argue with me about that. Once we were on the highway, though, Ba told me to take out my workbook. I had to do a page of long division with decimals. Problems, something we had covered in 5th grade. I wouldn't say learned, because that wouldn't be accurate. I was there, present in the classroom when it was taught. But it didn't sink in. I would say thumbscrews, hot coals, and long division with decimals were all forms of torture. I never got that dumb little dot in the right place. Who needs it? I asked when I checked the answers in the back of the workbook and discovered I hadn't got a single answer right so far. I shut the workbook and tried not to think about throwing it out the window. It probably would have looked like a bird, its white pages flapping in the wind. Here, said Ba. Give it to me. He drove with one hand and wrote with the other, using the dashboard as a desk. Do it this way. He handed it back. I shook my head. That's not the way my teacher taught it. Ba looked at me in the rearview mirror. This is the way I learned it. This is American math, not Chinese math. Ba didn't know anything about being a kid in America. I constantly had to explain my life to him, slumber parties, tree houses, professional football. Once, on my 6th birthday, I was about to blow out the candles when Ba stopped everything. What does this mean, make a wish? He asked. He'd heard it before, of course, but it was like he was hearing it for the first time. We told him that it was just for fun. A birthday custom. Ba made a face and sighed. Children should say I will work when they want to say I wish, he said. I will work for a new baseball glove. I will work for a new frisbee. I knew what he was thinking, we were spoiled. Spoiled American children. Now my father sighed again, no doubt thinking that my lack of enthusiasm for long division was another sign of how spoiled and lazy I was. Peter, mathematics is an international language. A right answer is a right answer. I looked at the way my father had set up the problem. I felt more confused than ever. Try it, insisted Ba, and the pressure in his voice made me tense up. Hey. What's going on here? Nelson slid the workbook away from me and looked at it. Long division. With decimals. Cool. The wind whipped his hair into his eyes. You don't really, my father started. Nelson leaned over so I could hear him better. You know, if you really like baseball, you should like long division, especially with decimals, Nelson continued. Long division has nothing to do with baseball, I said. Baseball is fun. What was Clementi's average last year? Asked Nelson. He grinned. I tapped my cheek, pretending to think, but we both knew what was coming. 352, announced Mom from the front seat. And he was a Gold Glove, again. We say 352, but of course, it's really. Nelson wrote imaginary numbers in the air. .352, I finished for him. I hadn't thought of it that way. Because you divide the number of hits by the number of at-bats. Nelson finished my sentence. Right? And you can't get a number greater than 1 because that would mean the player got more hits than at-bats. Nelson slid my pencil to the left. So the decimal goes. There. Remember, you can always move the decimal point 2 spots to the right, and that's the same as the percentage. Clementi was hitting 35.2% last year, or about 1 out of 3 at-bats. Suddenly it all came together. Yeah. Okay. I looked at the problem again, and now the numbers seemed to snap to attention. It was easier if I approximated the answer first. I see it now. Mom turned around in her seat. That was a good idea, Nelson. Peter could have solved it the other way, said Ba. But this he understands it better, said Nelson. Nelson was right, of course. He understood how I thought. Ba made a noise in his throat. It sounded like the first rumble of a thunderstorm. Please don't fight, I begged silently. Ba had just said all the answers were the same, but of course, he didn't listen to himself. Mom made a clucking noise in her throat. Hey, she said, trying to change the subject. Who thinks Taiwan is going to win again? Taiwan had won its first Little League World Series 2 years ago, stunning everybody including the regular Far East champion, Japan. We didn't talk about anything else for a week, not even school. We all said together. This we could agree on. Then Elaine piped in, but it'd be okay if the US won, too. It's more important for Taiwan than the US, said my father. It's also a baseball game, said Nelson, half joking. If Taiwan wins this most American of games, the US must pay attention to Taiwan, not just China, said Ba, not getting the joke. Did you read about that kid on the other team? Said Mom. What's his name? McClendon? Yeah, they're starting to call him Legendary Lloyd. And he's had 4 home runs so far in the tournament, I said. Nelson nodded. He's also their pitcher, said Mom. He's had a shutout, too. I couldn't believe these players were my age. They were going to be on TV, playing for the right to be world champions. Ba pointed at my workbook. Finish your work, Peter. I'll check it when you're done. There is a steep hill down to the Howard J. Lamade Stadium, which makes it look like a stage, with the hills and sky behind it a perfect backdrop. You need tickets to sit in the bleachers, but you can sit on the grassy hill beyond the outfield for free. That's where we sat, along with what seemed like every other Chinese person on the East Coast. Mom spread out a blanket for us to sit on. A man walked by and gave us little flags for Taiwan. Taiwan's colors are also red, white, and blue, a solid red field with a blue rectangle with a white sun in the upper left-hand corner. Elaine found a US flag, too, and waved both while she ran around. You should really just pick one side, I told her. Lainey shook her head. I don't want anyone to feel bad, she told me. Then she skipped away. Mom and Ba talked to the other Chinese families sitting on nearby blankets. Mom reported that the coach for Taiwan had announced that he would rather lose with honor than intentionally walk McClendon. I also overheard some of the families talk about Bayrin, black people. The newspapers had said that the team from Gary was the first all-black team to play in the championships. Most of the players from Taiwan, I guessed, had probably never seen a black person up close before, and it was probably vice versa for the players from Gary. The U.S. team jumped out to a 3-run lead in the first inning when McClendon hit a long ball for a homer that drove in 2 other runners. He didn't even look like he was swinging hard, he was that good. My father put his hands over his head and groaned. We were in the middle of a scoreless second inning when a pair of legs interrupted my view. Hi, Peter, said the legs. It was Clarissa Liao. Her mom and dad, who I called Liao Ai and Liao Susu, were my parents' best friends. Clarissa was good friends with Elaine, even though she was closer to my age. Do you mind not blocking my view? I asked. I couldn't just shove her to one side because my parents were there. She probably knew that, too. At least she was skinny enough that she couldn't block the entire game. I could still see home plate. Yuck, you actually care about this game? It's boring. She flopped down next to me and sat too close on purpose. Her bony shoulder pressed against me. I scooted away. Actually, I do. And what's that smell? Are you wearing bug spray? I waved my hand in front of my face. It's a new perfume. My mom bought it from our neighbor who is an Avon lady. It's called Firefly. She flipped her hair over her shoulder and almost hit me in the eye. Rest assured, it smells exactly like fireflies, I told her. Dead ones. Why, oh. Clarissa sputtered. She jumped up and stomped back to her own blanket. Elaine followed her, and they began whispering and giggling. I went back to watching the game, swatting at the gnats. I hadn't noticed them before, so maybe Clarissa's perfume was really a bug attractor. Nelson leaned over. You know she likes you, right, Peter? Who? Clarissa. That's why she came over here. Nelson looked over his shoulder. She's kind of cute, you know. I took a quick peek at Clarissa. I suppose if you like long black hair, big bug eyes, and stinky perfume, she's not so bad. Girls were completely mysterious to me. They traveled in packs, and they spent lots of time talking behind cupped hands. Nelson laughed. When you're my age, you'll understand. If she had a Chinese Taipei jersey, then we could talk, I said. The coach from Taiwan decided to reconsider his promise not to intentionally walk McClendon. Then Taiwan tied things up in the fourth inning when a run came in on a wild overthrow. It was anyone's game now. There were 2 more innings to go in regulation. Ba cupped his hands over his mouth and shouted, "Jia Yu," which made me jump. My father never shouted in public, but he was joining the Taiwan fans. Jia Yu meant add gas or go. The game stretched beyond the regulation 6 innings. Mom opened the cooler and began putting together paper plates full of food, serving Ba first. I could barely eat. I nibbled at the chicken, and then looked over Nelson's shoulder. He was scoring the game. The batter struck out looking. Nelson wrote in a backwards K. I never go down looking, I said. It happens, said Nelson. It's happened to me. You get fooled sometimes. Nothing worse than getting caught flat-footed, right? That's why you score it differently from the guy who was at least swinging away. You're doing your job, the pitcher is doing his job. That's all. I supposed. There were lots of guys going down at the plate. McClendon and Taiwan's pitcher, Chin-Moo Su, battled from the mound. Su threw strikeout after strikeout. The crowd grew louder. We all chanted together. Su Chin-Moo. Chin-Moo Su. Bi Huang. Don't be afraid. BG. Don't be nervous. Jiu Hao Hao Tu Chio, just keep pitching well. 7th inning. 8th inning. We ate the lemon cake and finished off our cokes. They're both good teams, said Mom, stretching her arms. It's just a matter of who is going to last long GR. It didn't seem fair that the Taiwan team could lose. They had to fly halfway around the world to come play. If they lost, they would have that whole long flight back home to stew about it. And I didn't even want to think about what Bob would do if they lost. I stared at the and tried to will the team to gameplay better. Finally, in the 9th inning, Taiwan broke loose. They scored 9 runs in a collection of